Enrique Rodriguez, welcome to Acquiring Minds.
Thank you for having me, Will. Happy to be here.
Enrique, you bought a project-based construction business, and you're not apologizing for it. If anything, you're going to tell us the strengths of such businesses. We will get there. But start us off, please, with some background on you, Enrique.
Okay, I'm local Northern Virginia. I moved here from native Peru with my parents when I was 7. I went to school in Annandale, Virginia, which is a suburb of Washington, D.C. After high school, I went to Virginia Tech and I studied electrical engineering. After Virginia Tech, in the summers from Virginia Tech, I would work at Whitey's Pool Construction. It was just foreman-based business. It was my first foray into blue collar work. I would get I would work alongside blue collar guys and some college guys just getting beer money for the rest of the year, and worked there every summer. And I got that was my first foray in construction. After I graduated Virginia Tech, I got a job at a small engineering firm in Fairfax, Virginia. It was 12-person outfit, 2 owners, 1 admin, and then the rest of us. And that was at the same time as the recession, so there wasn't really didn't really like the place that much, but there wasn't anywhere to go. Learned some engineering, and I really want to get a background on these companies because I got to experience small business, lower middle market business, a very established middle market business. And then I worked for a Fortune 500 company also. And I got to see the pluses and minuses of all those businesses as I did my engineering. So my second job, it was like an established middle market company with hundreds of millions in revenue, but I still worked at the same size 30-person office. I think it had like 20 or 30 independent profit centers. It was more like a hold co than one large engineering firm. It was just loosely based offices that somebody with deep pockets just started acquiring, and they weren't really interrelated or working together. So it was more like a hold co that that grew to the hundreds of millions with one owner. That's about as far as I knew for it. I was just a mid-level engineer. Then I went to a KTA group in 2013, where I got promoted very well. That was probably, I would say, my favorite job. It was a 37-person engineering firm. The owner was there on site. He was hands-off, but it had all the structure of a large company. It was the most efficient place and effective place I worked at. It was a single office. It was a lower middle market company, made me bringing in $8 to $10 million a year, and it really did a lot more than bigger places and everything else. So I got to see how a well-run organization looked like. Then, I always wanted to work at a large firm, and I got a job at a very large, the largest engineering firm in the country. I worked there for 5 years. I got to work on some pretty interesting projects locally around the DC area and then internationally. And as I, grew as an engineer, so did my salary. And, I managed people. I did project management, and I was a department manager. So I managed in my career maybe like a dozen people. And projects in the millions of dollars. So that's my background. What led me to buy a business? I started in 2018 to in between my job at KTA and my last employer. I started, what's next for me? How do I grow career wise? And I was thinking maybe starting my own engineering firm, but then I'd have to bootstrap it for a few years. And then I learned about the SBA program. There wasn't much information out there. I just knew that you had to put 25% down, and then the SBA would back 75% of it. I didn't even get to read that the Walker Diebold or the HBR guide then. I didn't read that till a few years later. And I asked my wife, I'm like, hey, what if I buy this? There was actually an electrical company for sale in Fairfax, Virginia. And I said, what if I buy this? I think the price was like $2.5 million at the time. And we could probably scrub up together close to a down payment at that time. She asked, and she talked to me frankly, and she said, hey, what makes you think you can run the place? And I said, well, I do the plans that the contractors build. And they're like, what else? What's your business background? What's you don't even have the right licensing. She was right. So I went back to the drawing board. I changed jobs. Then my plan was always to get my MBA so I could be comfortable in business. And then I also got my master electrician license so I could be able to take over an electrical contractor.
Were you always going to go back for an MBA? Or was this all now going back for the MBA? Was this all part of the plan to now buy a business?
Yeah, it was part of the plan to either start a business or buy a business.
Oh, okay.
Before I did that, I wanted to be comfortable with business. And, I have extensive engineering background in the electrical industry and in construction, but not in business. I didn't feel comfortable in it. I don't like getting into things unless I'm comfortable. And it was, natural progression. I was a mid-level manager, and in case I did, So, and it was very educational for me. It made me feel very comfortable in business. I know some people, struggle with, should I get an MBA if I buy it? I would say yes.
Really?
Yes.
What about your MBA education have you found most valuable?
I found that, the George Mason in-state education goes, toe-to-toe with any Ivy League education. We all learn the same curriculum. I learned finance and accounting, and I had an entrepreneurship class, and, I got to read a lot of case studies, and gave me just the confidence and, reps to now that I'm in the owner's seat, I have to deal with finance and accounting all the time, and I wouldn't want to not be speaking the same language. I'm not an expert by any means, but I know how to speak the language, and I know, the mode of information, all the important stuff of running a business.
Yeah. And when you do a night school style MBA, how long does that take?
I did it in 3 years.
Okay.
From 2021, I think I ended December 2023. So 3 full years in night school, 16 classes. Yeah. Summers too. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, great. And so you get out and then you decide, you're confronted again with, do I buy or do I build a business?
Yeah. So, I had an LLC where I did some side work as an engineer, small projects. So I had that since about the same time as I started night school. So I would do like 20 to 50 grand of work a year on the side, just like designing, the electrical system, the engineering systems for, let's say, a restaurant renovation or very minor commercial work. And so I wanted to get the feel of, do I really want to, have to do the books myself? When you own a business, you gotta get the work, you gotta do the work, and then you gotta do the business. So I wanted to be comfortable with all three on a smaller scale. So I would do this side work. I still have the engineering firm. It's just an LLC with some subcontractors that I get work from when I need, have a contract. So that made me feel comfortable. I did that for about 3-4 months in 2024, or more than that. I graduated in December 2023. And then I spent maybe 6 months in 2024 looking at that, getting a few more contracts. And then, by then I really wasn't doing my day job too much. I was just focusing on what's my, how comfortable do I feel in my next step, which is buying or starting a business. I would start looking on Biz Buy Sell again. And then this listing came up in Sterling, Virginia, another suburb of the DC area. I was Mac General Inc. at the time. And I said, you know what? It was around maybe April of 2024. I said, I'm going to take a look at the sim. So I reached out to the broker, and he sent me the sim, and it was smaller than I wanted. At the same time, when I thought I was going to...
What had your criteria been for your search?
Well, I heard on podcasts, and I read the HBR guide, and I read, Walker Dybel's book, and whatever, searcher related stuff was out there. I joined Search Funder, and everybody was talking about the bigger you buy, the better it is, because it's a long way down, and the SBA will give you up to $5 million. And so I pulled some capital lines of credit from I got a HELOC for my house, and I got a personal line of credit on securities, on stocks and bonds that we we wife and I own, and we so I had like over $500,000 in cash plus cash. I had cash savings, so I had more than $500,000 more dollars, more like $750K if I wanted to buy a business, $5 million. I did look at other sims for an engineering business in North Carolina, a very large electrical contractor that was in Maryland. That was about $4 million. But the first one I looked at was Mac General, and the first thing I said to the broker was, it's not the size that I was looking for, and he's like, yeah, but the price is right. It was at $450,000 was the asking price. I bought 1.35 million of revenue and 240 SDE.
And 240 SDE.
And that's an average of 3 years. It always fluctuated. So they were presenting their best. The best year was 2023. That was probably 300K in SDE, but 2022 was not that good, and 2021 was good. So the average probably is 240.
So the price being right, what the broker meant by that is less than a 2x.
Yeah.
At first blush.
That is correct. Yeah.
Now, as we'll find out, you had to you then infused more money into the business. So it wasn't truly a less than 2x, but we'll get there. Keep going. What else did you like about Mac General?
So I looked at the sim, and the broker said, how about you meet Mike, the owner? And I said, okay. So I went to his office, in early summer. This was maybe May or June. We met several times on the weekends. First time I met him and the broker. He seemed like a good guy. He is a good guy now that I know him well. And, the books seem more or less, it wasn't a big company. There was 10 to 12 employees fluctuating. After we negotiated an LOI, or right before I negotiated the LOI, he showed me something that made the place special. He showed me his bid log. So he has an email where all the bids come in, and it was always coming in. His bid flow was every 10 minutes, a new request for contract would come in. And from his 30 years of doing work, and it wasn't just little residential work or that, it was large projects, medium projects. I recognized all the contractors around town. He had an extensive bid flow.
So just to be clear, for those of us who don't come from construction land, project-based construction land, what it is the GCs will put out a request for bid.
That is correct.
And then you, as the contractor, bid on the work and hopefully are awarded that work.
Yes.
And so your bid flow is how many of these requests for bids are coming out. You looked at his email alias for that inbox, and he was getting, ding, ding, ding every 10 minutes. There was a request for bid. So while he didn't have that business, there was this was basically like the equivalent in construction business of a ringing phone. Phone just kept ringing.
It was the equivalent of you're looking at a waterfall and you put your little red cup out there to get a drink. That's what it is. And
he was not bidding on, is the idea that he was bidding on a lot less than he could have, and he was small by choice, by design, sort of thing?
Yeah, he picked what he thought it was best fit for him, and he bid it, and then he got the job, then he did the job, and then he went back to the waterfall and he got another drink. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. From your perspective, you interpret it like, if I want to grow, I can just start accepting a lot or start bidding on a lot more of these jobs than he is. That's
right. Our let's say, our bid hit rate on what we estimate. So our sales process is sending estimates. Every 17 estimates, we're getting a job. So we have to send 17 estimates, and it's not like you get to pick the one you want. I have yet to even close to tap what that bid, that bid flow does, and we send a lot more than 17 a month. We're probably sending 1 or 2 a day, and these jobs range from 200K to 2-3 million in electrical work only.
Mm-hmm.
So we send about 17 of those, more than that, and we still get to pick what we want to send out. I've got so it's and then to get into the bid list, it's not like you just sign up on a web server. You have to pre-qualify to the contractor. You have to show them I am a real company. I've done years of work. Here's my projects. Here's my references. Here's my lines of credit. Here's my bonding. Here's half a dozen. So to get into there, we had try to add more contractors to the bid flow. It's a bit of work.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Well, and we're going to hear about how you amped that up once you got into the seat. But just a little bit more about what you liked about the business. So this bid flow was incredible. You thought the seller seemed solid. The multiple was good. But even though it was a really small business, you said you were prepared to max out the SBA. I mean, you had $550,000 that you could put toward this project as a down payment, and then max out the SBA. So quite a bit larger business than this one, which is basically a tenth of the size of that at 450,000. It didn't bother you that how did you think about it being so small and it being so much smaller than you had kind of aimed for?
Well, I went back to the drawing board. I thought about it and I said, hey, there's two things you can do. If you take out a $5 million loan, that's financial risk. Right, you got to pay $800K a year in debt service to the SBA, give or take, depending on the rates these days, and you got to have $1 million in EBITDA for them to give you that five. So that's financial risk, because that million can go to $500,000, and then you can't service that loan. So I basically what it did, I transferred instead of having big financial risk, because I'm basically doing all cash, I have more execution risk.
Mm-hmm.
I have to, if I want that $5 million or to $10 million revenue business, I have to execute. I have to have a better plan and grow the business. So I transferred the financial risk, and now I got execution risk. But I got a lot less financial risk now.
And the execution was something you felt confident in. This was right in your wheelhouse. You had worked in all varying sizes of projects and businesses. And you had already at this point, you said you got your master's electrician license?
Yes, I got that one in 2020 during the pandemic. I had some free time in the pandemic, so I just got my master electrician.
So great business buyer fit. Of all people, you are the guy to grow this thing.
Yeah, I would say I would give myself a 98%, grade as business buyer fit. I've got the skills, the experience. I'm local. I know all the the same contractors he knew. I knew I had a plan day one coming in. I mean, the only person that could probably fit better is somebody that bought, grew, and sold this exact same business in this industry.
Yeah.
So I told you what I liked about it. Let me tell you what I didn't like about it.
Yeah, please.
That's where the execution risk comes in.
Okay.
He had zero backlog, which in project-based businesses, you need, like a healthy business has 1.5 years of backlog. He had a month. So because he got a job, he did the job, ran out of backlog, then he went to go get another job. And that's how, he went from having a job to zero to having a job to zero.
So he was only ever with one job max.
Well, maybe two, maybe the tail end of one and the other, but it was a very owner central business. And everything went through him. He was the estimator. He was the project manager. He was the accounting person. Sometimes his wife helped, but she had her own career. And then anybody around him was either a helper or an admin, not nobody to take ownership, not a manager. So one of the first things so there was no management team. So that's what made it actually small. There was no backlog. The technology wasn't from the 90s. But because his wife was an IT person, so let's say it was stuck in 2009 when he decided not. So he had an ERP system, he had printers, he had technology, but it was technology from maybe 10 to 15 years ago.
Okay.
The space was a bit of a mess. It took a lot. I had a guy for 1.5 months just driving stuff to the scrapyard nonstop. It was just loaded up with stuff. There was.
What do you mean?
He just, whatever you finish from a job, he would bring it in and leave it. And then sometimes he would buy things at auctions and it was just the warehouse and the office space was they had a lot of unwalkable areas. It was stacked to the ceiling with crap.
It sounds hoarder-ish.
Yes, it was a bit like that in a nicer term. And, day one, I just said, all this shit has got to go. That's not who I am. If you go in my house, my closet is big towels, middle towels, little towels. It's all perfectly in order. So I spent the first couple months just cleaning it up as much as I could, new equipment, computers. Back to the other,
Well, Enrique, let me understand about how you bought the business. So 450, you didn't use any SBA loan. That's almost too small for an SBA loan.
You can do an XBA Express. I actually, reached out to the banks to see if they just give me a loan, even though I had the cash, and they said, yeah, it's under 500K. You can get an Express. I talked to someone at Live Oak. I reached out to Matthias Smith. He said less than $1 million he won't do. It's just not, worth it for them. And, they're like, just buy cash, and is that small.
Now, the thing is Enrique, like, despite the fact that you don't have the financial risk of a big loan hanging over your head, at $450,000 and you've got $5,750,000 to your name, that does spend a lot of your own money. So you got a lot of your own net worth wrapped up in this.
I don't have 750 just to my name. So I was okay losing 750,000. My wife right now.
Okay.
Yeah, we have assets.
So you had 750 to put toward this project.
That is
but
correct.
You actually had more behind that.
Yeah. If the investment went to zero, we still spend the summers at the beach house. We still send our kids to private school. We still,
really
nanny and everything. Yeah, we were. Yeah, we've been doing okay for a while. So just the next level. The next level is be to own a business, and and then. Yeah, we're both good professionals. She has her own business. Actually, she was the financier for my purchase. It's her 750,000, not my 750,000. Yeah, that makes me very, very lucky husband. Yeah,
good for you guys. That's cool. All right. So did you have any seller note in there?
No, I did a 20% holdback for 1 year. So from the 450. 360K up front, and then 90K goes into escrow for holdback. He gave me 1 month, transition labor, and then I pay him his hourly rate that we negotiated. And he's a full-time employee, basically. It was a small business, so I did the due diligence. I did the quality of revenue and earnings and everything. I checked every number that he spent since mid-2020, and, it was all in the right pot.
Oh, wow. You went through line by line since mid-2020?
7,362 transactions since October of 2020 till when I bought it.
Wow.
Yeah.
You really did learn something at your MBA.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. And why did you not want to just pay for a third-party expert to do your due diligence?
Kind of expensive.
Tisk.
It was kind of expensive. Just because I have the money doesn't mean I just throw it around.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Even in a project-based business, Enrique, where we know that those are the ones with the trickiest cash flow.
Yeah, but I mean, I've about project-based business. I spent my entire career in project-based business. So has my wife, and we've done very well. And there's entire companies out there in industries where everything's a project. So it's fed me well. I'm never worried about if I started an engineering firm, it's project by project. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and Enrique, I want to hear you give your monologue on why you're a believer in project-based businesses.
Yeah.
I was just leaning on you because I feel like project-based construction businesses, the working capital can be particularly hairy there, and so all the more reason to lean on an expert for financial due diligence. But you've answered my question on that.
Yeah.
And you had the license, to be clear. Now I
am a master electrician.
So all of that stuff was
I'm
a non-issue as well.
Engineer. Yep. I have all the licensing to own it day one.
Great. Okay. So I heard you mention your plan. What was your plan as you looked from the outside looking in? What were you going to do when you got in the seat, and what did you do?
Well, I had a value creation plan. I thought, everybody creates a business plan, but since I didn't have to do SBA, I didn't have to do a business plan. And you use the existing company's data to create a business plan going forward. And I didn't like his existing data. I liked his his qualifications, right? Well, I was buying Mike's reputation in the industry and the bid flow that and his workers that were loyal to him, and Mike, his experience. I wasn't buying much else, so why would I create a business plan with data that I don't like? So I had to recreate it to what I want, and you don't. So I did a value creation plan where the typical levers. I planned my own ERP system. I started from the top line. His estimating process was a bit slow, and I centered around Mike. I got a software. It's called Vision Infosoft Electrical Bid Manager, which is the latest technology for bidding, and Bluebeam that has some automations. And now we can just, bing, bam, boom, bam, beam, every 4 hours send out an estimate instead of every couple of days. I'm using the latest technology for estimating. Then I have an ERP system that does project-based accounting, connects directly to QuickBooks, manages the project and the time and everything. I had materials management SOP. I cleaned the place up. I literally took the shit out of this place and made it into an office for professionals. I hired. My plan was to hire key management staff. I've been. I think I mentioned to you that I'm a big fan of the Rewild Group, the growth guide. So Mike had a level 2 business that was 1 to 2, so it was owner centric. Everything went through him, and my plan was taking it from Mike's level to level 3, which is I got the book. It's called the delegation stage. I get it confused, and so I had to take Mac General from 10 employees to about 23 employees, and set 3 to 5. Have a professional level of managers in place. So my plan was to hire 1 or 2 key managers, and then I would sit above the rest. There was already a office manager in place. She was admin assistant, promoted her to office manager. I made Mike my head of estimating. So he's, head of sales. That's another manager. I hired a guy from my previous industry to be the project manager, but really with the intent as I grow to be the head of all project managers. So that's my third manager. And then for accounting and finance, I rely on my dad, who's a CPA. He's retired, but he does my books. So that's my fourth manager. And so I got accounting, finance, the office, projects, estimating, and what is the fifth manager? I forget.
Enrique, just a little bit more in the Rewild Group. So quick context for the audience. Matt Pohl, people might remember, it was actually a year ago that his episode aired. He bought a welding business. He and his wife bought a welding business that was really small, 2 welders in the shop, basically. But he also has conceived of this framework, the Rewild Group, where, as you alluded to, there are stages of a small business's development and maturation from, as you can imagine, it just sort of like startup 1 to 10 employees to stage 2, which is you're ramping up, but it's still owner centric. And you started to describe it. Stage 3 is where you have some managers, and it goes on from there. And so that's kind of it in a nutshell. I'm sure I'm oversimplifying there, but just say a little bit more about your adoption of this framework. Why, how, why not EOS? Is it like EOS? How's it different? Tell us more.
EOS, I thought it was just like how to run meetings and stuff. I don't have much research on EOS system. I did do the look at the Rewild Group after watching one of your episodes, and I hired a strategy consultant from a business consultant to help me grow the business from the Rewild Group. His name's Lee Mulberry from Northern Star. He's been with me since the beginning, and he's been helping me strategize as I go along. He's my business consultant. So actually, since I bought the business cash and I didn't need to get investors, I felt like I needed like a circle of advisors so that I wouldn't just go in the wrong direction. So I part of my plan was to have advisors to help guide me, because it is my first business that I own, and I lead it. And Can you excuse me 1 second? I gotta yell at the guys outside. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. These guys are getting real loud over there.
Enrique, is this, did we just get a window into your management style? You had to go out there and yell at the guys? Is that what I heard you say?
I don't have to yell. I just have to flex a little bit, and that's it.
Is that what a blue collar business is like?
Yeah, I mean,
shut up out there.
No, but you got to be able to, be able to take charge and take control, and you have to enjoy that. If you don't enjoy that part of delegating and in whatever in that fashion, and that, you're going to have a lot of issues managing.
What do you mean? What do you mean? You have to kind of, you mean as being assertive, or just what do you mean?
Beyond assertive. I always felt like the people in the military make good people, operators for this industry. I'm not a military background, but you have to be assertive. You can't be wishy-washy. People need direction. You've got field guys. They're like, you got your foreman. He's like a sergeant, and you're the captain. You're the officer. And you have to have clear direction and a plan. And they will follow you through, and you can't be wishy-washy about your plan. You have to be direct. And if somebody is not following your directions, you have to correct them, like in the military.
You're kind of smirking there. What does that mean? Discipline them clearly, and
you have to let them
quickly.
Know clearly. Yeah, I mean, that there's there's no, especially in construction, safety is an issue. Work is an issue. I tell you, when I hire new guys, the first thing I tell them is like, hey, sometimes there's issues out there. There's one contractor doesn't like another contractor. A lot of people are working together. They're rubbing shoulders. No matter what happens, there will be no issues on my job site. Under my, if you're wearing my shirt, you will clock out. You will take the day off. Sure, go meet the guy down the street if you want, but not on my clock, not in my project site. Because if we get kicked off the job, I don't get paid. You might still get paid because that's the law, but I'm not going to be happy.
Okay, Enrique, wait, hold on. Hold on for a second. So in construction land, fights between contractors, different contractors on the same site break out sometimes.
No, never. No, there's a lot of, everybody gets kicked off the job if there's any sort of issue. Everybody knows that. And if you would have something like that once, you're off. You're off you'll find a new job. No, nobody does that. But it happens on rare occasions. People rub them the wrong way, and you have to cool the situation. Yeah. Okay. It happens. Okay. It's happened. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right. You were saying about Rewild.
I bought up a couple of his, like workbooks and stuff, and I was like, yeah, this is good stuff. And it was I think I listened to the episode about the same time that I was figuring out my plan for Mac General, and it made sense. I saw, what he said in the workbooks fit exactly into the people aspect of how Mac General was, and then the next level looked like something that I wanted to have. So I tailored my plan to follow the people approach to growth and the strategy. Okay. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And is there like something that you can map out? Like you talked about how you've built out a management team. Do you have, is it like in year 2, you do this, and in year 3, you do that sort of thing? Is it some very clear kind of prescription you're following?
It was all right away. Right away, day one, get it all happening. That's something about that buy then build where Walker says wait 90 days and don't do anything. I completely disagree with that. Day one, you're a new owner. You're change. You're you're a walking representation of change. Just have the change in owner. Might as well take advantage of it and rip out the kitchen sink if you don't like where it's at. Buy new equipment. Check change the ERP, make it all happen.
And what about so let's just steelman this a little bit, Enrique. The big reason, one of the big reasons not to do the change is, of course, one of the big reasons is people resisting that change and it being overwhelming. The other, though, is not knowing what the ripple effects of a change could be, because you just don't know the business very well. And you need the 90 or 180 days to learn what you don't know. I suspect your answer might be different if you, like many of my guests, bought into an industry they don't know. You know this business. So that probably gives you a little bit more confidence to make changes. Fair?
Oh, that is correct. Yeah, I wouldn't buy into an industry I don't know much about. I feel like that's a big execution risk.
Embrace Rewild. You've told us about the other changes you make. We've talked about the bid flow, but you haven't told us what you actually did with your cup in the fountain, actually.
Yeah. So, it was revealed to me like 2 days before our agreement of purchase that he had about a month left in backlog. And, he said it very kindly. He's like, "Hey, I think the first thing you should do when you take over is get more work." And I go, "Why is that?" He's like, "Well, we only have about 80,000 worth of work left. And I think it's going to run out in September." I'm like, and that was the, oh my God moment. Do I still want to go through with this? I thought deeply and for a day, and I talked to my wife again, and she said, "Just go for it. You'll fix it. I trust you." She, when she's in my group of advisors, and I respect her vision. And I said, "Okay, all right. You think I can do it? I can do it." And we went forward with it. Whatever other problems there were, that was the biggest problem.
But Enrique, at this point, you did know that the bid flow was strong. That was one of the first things you saw about the business.
Yeah, actually,
so even though he only had this $80,000 of booked work, you knew that you could come in and start bidding on a ton of stuff, right?
Yes, I actually started helping them bid for stuff. So we had a scheduled buy date like right before Labor Day, and then that got pushed 2 weeks. So as soon as he told me that, I actually started. I had the plan to implement the new software, and I had already bought it on my own desktop, on my own laptop, so I can learn it and I take some videos. So I already had the software set up and the plan to use it. So I said, "Hey, just start sending me some bids, and I'll start sending stuff out there and start fixing the problem." So on top of doing all the agreement paperwork and still pretending to do my day job and other family related stuff. I have a wife and 2 kids. I started doing bids for them, and seeing if we can get a job. In hindsight, it really didn't do much. It was like I said, I did like 2 or 3 bids, but at least it got me into the routine of how I can make it efficient. So I started before we even bought. Like we're already working on the agreement and hashing out the details. One of the main things in the purchase that we also hashed out besides that is I included working capital in my purchase in the 450, about 170K of it.
You mean he had that on the books and he left it behind? He left that 170
that
for
was
you?
About half. Yeah, in accounts receivable. Half of what was in accounts receivable went to me, and then the other half went to him.
And that half was about 170, or that half was 85? 170. Great.
Yeah, and then he had 100. So basically, for the 450, I know it sounds like a cheap price. I'm giving him the opportunity to cash out. He gets to, take the cash that he used to fund the business. When you do cash accounting, you have to have a higher account. So he had like 200K in his bank account to go over all the cycles of payroll. And when he gets paid, he left he had like $200,000 in the account. He can take that money out because I have to put my money in. He gets to have half of it, his accounts receivable goes in his pocket. Plus, he gets 450 of my money. Yeah.
And there's actually another piece of the deal that we didn't talk about, which was the additional money that you brought and put on the balance sheet. Tell us about that, please.
If you look at where's the paper? Yeah. So I put in here this. So over the 450, I told you that he was doing cash accounting, so he had like maybe 225,000 in his account, give or take on average, because I got to see all his numbers. And when you do cash accounting, you just don't. If he had that much money, then you don't worry about it going up or down. That's how he just functions his business. I changed to accrual, so I figured I could do half as much. So I think I put like 125,000 into the account day one to start covering payroll and everything. So it was 450 plus 125,000. So it's 575. And then as the business grows, after I spent the first month getting the first couple jobs, then that accounts receivable starts growing. So I had to add more money into there. I think overall of my own cash, I did put all the 750K. Then I got a business line of credit for another 300,000. And then got another line of credit for 150. I've only put 150,000 of that line of credit into, and it's all in the accounts receivable. I mean, for example, right now my AR is 733,000. $230,000 of that is my net profit stuck in accounts receivable. That leaves $600,000. I have $120,000 in accounts payable from distributors that I haven't paid yet. So that takes my my working capital down to $480,000 that I actually have in there. 170 of that 480,000 is my initial AR that came with the company. Then you got 310,000 left. 160,000 of that 310,000 is my line of credit that I have in there, and then the 150K is my money. The last 150K is my money.
Okay,
that's where that's how it's grown, over time.
Okay, well, thank you for this transparency. Wow, Enrique, it's great. But net it out for us. If I pressed you to say like the effective price to buy this business, so not just the 450, but then money that you out of your own pocket that you put on the balance sheet that isn't coming back to you other than an exit. What that's it's basically equity in the business. It's not a loan. What would you say the effective price of the business
I would
is?
say I put all that 750K cash into it, plus maybe I didn't pay myself for the first 5 months. So let's put 90,000 on that. I think the number that I had on my payback calculates 840,000 all in.
840.
But that's not buying a business to keep it the same size. That's buying a business with the plan to grow it immediately.
Exactly.
And investing in the ERP system and all the other things and tools and everything that was necessary.
Exactly. So that 840, a lot of the cash of that 840 is immediately going to be spent on investment.
Yep. That's gone.
Hiring the managers, the new ERP, et cetera.
Yep.
Okay. All right.
And then now to date, I think it's 525,000 is what's on my lines of credit. I paid back with the cash, and I've paid back maybe I think 300,000, but a lot of it's in AR. So I think I've cashed myself out 100,000 to pay, and then the loans are back to like maybe 500, 525.
Well, Enrique, I am not keeping up with all of the details here, but we are getting a good picture of, small business accounting and cash flow and money moving around the different accounts and AR, AP, loans, and whatnot. So it is more complicated than it might seem, especially in a project-based business.
Yeah, once if you look at it every day, it starts looking pretty simple, and I see the number every day, and I got a nice ERP system that shows me to date what my backlog is, where my cash is, where everything is. So I have a nice dashboard that the system I use is Nullify. I've been pretty happy with it.
Okay.
And I have my backlog and then what my active contracts is and everything. So, I try to keep track of it daily, make sure it's all right, especially when I'm trying to grow.
Enrique, one thing that I skipped over, just going back to your selection of this business, actually two things. First, you didn't tell us exactly like what the business does and what industry it operates in, because you really liked that about it. So tell us, please.
So Mag General Inc. is an electrical contractor, and it was exclusively a subcontractor to general contractors. So, when a job has electrical work, they need an electricals to do the electrical portion of the work. And we mainly are in the commercial, industrial, and the wastewater industry, where the wastewater industry doesn't have much competition. That was something else I liked about Mag General, that it played in a league bigger than or there's much bigger companies that are doing the electrical work in wastewater.
And so bigger companies, bigger projects. As I think you put to me in the pre-call, this is not something a guy in a truck can compete with you on.
That's right. In the service-based industries, your margins, when you expand and grow, your margins are always the same because your projects are always little, and you're always competing with truck and a truck. So you're going to have the same margins. In a project-based business, as you grow, you get bigger projects. Bigger projects have higher margins. More complicated projects have higher margins. Also, if you're a subcontractor, you can, in easy commercial work, like, for example, around here in the DC area, you have a lot of office space, right? lot of tenant renovations.
Yeah.
That's a very commoditized commercial work around here. It's very competitive. I see gross margins 20 to 30%. Now, if you're I also compete as a prime contractor on jobs that are mainly electrical. So if it's 90, like upsizing the service to a building, small building like a bank, that's an electrical project, that has a little bit of demolition. I would just take that as the GC. My margins there are anywhere from 30 to 40-ish gross margin because I take the GC's cut. That's about 15% to 20%. And then I have my subcontractor's cut. So the margins are better when you do prime work. And I look for that prime work. And also, since I'm a licensed engineer, we do design build work where we take on all the risk of giving the end user what they want based on their criteria. And I got to develop the plans and do the work. But the margins in design build are 40 to 60%. And then as the projects grow, those margins can creep up. If you're doing a $1 million project, the margin is going to be less than a $10 million project because there's less competition on those large projects. I don't see the service-based business having those types of margins.
Great. Thank you for that. And why was Mike selling?
Mike's 64. He was reducing his risk appetite. He Mac General provided for him. He owns this. I lease the warehouse. He owns the building. He has 3 properties around the DC area, including his primary house. He's got a beach house in Chincoteague in Virginia. Everything's paid off. He's got lots of money in the bank, and his biggest risk at 64 was not completing, him having a heart attack and not completing work and getting sued for not completing the work. So getting rid of that while still maintaining in the construction industry that he likes is something that he wanted.
You mean still maintaining? That's why he continued to work rather than retiring outright.
Yeah. I mean, he has the money. He's got a few years. His wife still works, and he's got a few years left in him, and so he's working as a head of estimates, and it's working out pretty good. So that's another thing that Walker Dybel says, to get rid of the owner in the first 30 days.
Yeah,
I disagree with that. I mean, if you have a good relationship with the owner and he's a good person, and a good employee and all this knowledge and experience. I mean, I would say Mike is in my, circle of advisors. I bounce ideas off him almost daily. It's my brother, he's an architect. He calls him my reverse foster father because I paid to have him as my daddy. But I ask him questions, in the industry. He has 45 years of experience in if any other place you work at, you would not get rid of someone with 45 years of experience.
Well, it's funny, Enrique, that you're mentioning this very point. I just earlier today did another interview with Jan Winiarski, and he had a bad transition specifically with regard to the sellers. And he had fully expected the sellers. It was a family business, so multiple family members in the business were going to stay on. And he and the sellers, that whole family clan, very hunky-dory, getting along super well during the acquisition. But at least his take on what happened after the acquisition was that they didn't really expect him to come in and make changes. Now, that was probably naive of them. That's why he's buying the business. And they reacted really badly to this guy, and they're making all these changes to their family business. Again, what were they expecting? But still, they did, and it went sideways. It got actually really ugly. So, to answer your point, and Walker Dybel's suggestion, Mike's, I presume, is okay with all the changes you're making.
I don't know.
But it may be that he's a guy who sees you cleaning out, the antiques that he had in his office and all the stacks of stuff up to the ceiling, and he might not have liked it. Turns out he was fine with it. But am I right to say that it could have gone either way?
I don't know if he was okay with it. I didn't ask. It's my company now.
Fair enough. It's not that you need his approval, but the point is that it could, if he didn't like it, it would mean that it's probably hard for him to stick around.
Yeah.
So I think the conventional wisdom is most sellers are going to feel territorial. And if you just come in and start making changes, they might think they're going to be okay with it, and then they're not. And oh, by the way, another huge point is the employees are going to feel like split loyalties, or they're going to have a hard time knowing what the chain of command is. So those, do you think that those reasons have credence?
I didn't see employee risk was a big concern of mine, and I talked to everybody the day one, and then afterwards, I didn't see it be that bad. Everybody stuck around, by the way, all the employees, and I talked to the leadership, the foreman, one-on-one, and I told them my plan is to rip everything out and make everything. Not that Mike did a bad thing. Mike's going to do it his way to what he fit his lifestyle, and I want to grow and make a large company. What do you think? Mm-hmm. I didn't ask permission, but I said, what do you think? Okay, well, whatever you want to plan, it's fine with me, boss. That's it. That's how it ended up. And then that was it. Yeah, and I ripped everything out and put something else in.
Okay, so let's move along here. I only got you for a few more minutes, Enrique, but so you get in there, you start bidding for jobs. You actually did it a little bit before from home. That didn't really go anywhere. Once you got into the seat, you were the owner and you were bidding aggressively. What happened?
I mean, I didn't. The first, the first thing that we need to do is get future work. So the first month, no matter, on top of the transition. Because you got transition stuff to do, like changing over payroll. You've got all the transition stuff that happens the first couple of months. Then I'm implementing all my new software stuff, and at the same time, I'm trying to bid nonstop. I got Mike bidding nonstop. I've got I had issues with and then those other issues just popped in randomly because you can't think of everything when you're transitioning a business. Just silly things looking back, but it was just all put together at once. So month in, we're finally starting to win some work. Just because you win the work doesn't mean it starts right away. But when I first started winning the first and second job, I started seeing the light of day. Till then, I had tunnel vision. It was all dark. I just had to keep on bidding till you win the first job. That was mission number one. And everybody in the office understood that. Sometimes the people on your show talk about their fetal moment. I didn't have a fetal moment per se, but between Thanksgiving and the last, the 2 weeks leading up to Christmas, like maybe mid-December, when I'm waiting for that first project to kick, the first check, and I'm looking, I've already put in an extra $250,000 on top of buying the business. It was hard to wait. It was just everything's in place, and then you got to wait. I'm at the bottom of the J curve. I check my numbers every day. I'm like, I'm just at the bottom of the J curve, which is very real, and it's gonna start rolling forward very soon. But those 3 weeks were pretty tough, just waiting. Because you were sure stuff would come in, but of course you're not 100% sure until it actually starts happening. Yeah. So the guys are they're working on the new jobs. I build the new jobs. The checks are going to come in. The cash flow starting to get better, and then it all worked. By the end of January, it's like it never happened. We're break even, and then we're growing. January was break even, and then February was a little profit. March was a big profit month. When we started our third project at the same time, I started growing with people. So really most of the growth started in March. I had a target of billing about $200,000 of work a month. We're about 320 right now. So I think we're going to hit maybe anywhere between 3.5 and 4 million for this year. So maybe 2.5 to 3x what we did last year.
Incredible. And so exceeding your hopes by a lot.
Yeah, more than what I needed to wanted to. My payback for the business will be March of next year. Our backlog right now is 6 months. I have some active contracts in the works. I'm trying to make it be a year and a half at a 4 million run rate. So I'm trying to get 6 million in backlog. My limiting factors for more growth right now is financing the working capital. So I have that line of credit, but I think I'm going to go through it sometime around October, November. I have all the softwares and everything in place. I can have projections as far as I want. Now I'm working with Lee at Northern Star on my 3-year strategic plan. Now I'm getting a real business plan into place to shop around with the banks and get a real working capital. And so I'm basically doing, like I told you, the SBA in reverse. I put cash in, I fix the business, and now I'm going to ask for a working capital through the SBA program that can give me a line of credit up to $5 million. And that at $5 million of working capital, that's like a $30 million business. So if I can get that a line of credit through the SBA or not, I've talked to a couple banks. They may or may not need to go through the working capital pilot program to give me that type of line of credit. It depends on my business plan and the strength of my financials. So that's the plan.
And put some numbers around that. You mentioned the 30 million. If you do the 5 million working capital line of credit, that'd be a $30 million business. But you had said to me that 15 million in revenue was what, the year 3 goal? Year 4?
Yeah, I was trying. We're working on our business plan, and it's I'm trying to hit 4 million this year, 7 million next year, and maybe 11. That's a maybe 55% growth, between 50 and 60% growth. And then maybe at the end of the year 3 would be somewhere in a run rate of 15, 16 million. Because it takes time to grow. You got to hire people. You got to get some equipment. We're not equipment heavy. We do a lot of renting of equipment. So, and there'll be some growing pains. So you don't want to grow too fast, and you want to make sure you got the backlog.
And what's the magic? What's magic about 15 million? Why is that your goal line as opposed to 10 or 20?
I'm at 15% profit, so 15 million puts me over 2 million EBITDA, and then I'm in the lower middle market, and then more opportunities for non-dilutive credit. Capital is out there for me at 3 million EBITDA. You get the SBIC you can talk to the SBICs, and you can get lines of credit that are 2 to 3 times a year's earnings. Right now, I have a line of credit that's 60% of my accounts receivable. So it's asset-based lending. But but once I get to a certain size, even though I'm project-based, especially if I'm project-based, it has bigger ebbs and flows. I will be large enough to be open up to middle market credit lines, and then I can grow. With a 10 million credit line, I can grow. My limiting factors to growth is my bonding capacity. I don't think we touched on that, and my working capital. Yeah, because the bid flow's there. I have a bid flow for a wild estimate of 25 million a year without having to do much business development.
And so the 15 million revenue number is not where this journey ends. It's just you see that as getting into the next category of construction business where you, as you said, you can get much more generous and larger working capital loans and therefore bid on much, much bigger projects and accelerate growth that much faster, I guess, to get to 30 million.
That is correct. I would keep the growth at a certain level that's comfortable. You grow too fast, and then things get out of control. I think 50% growth is aggressive, but still manageable. Mainly because that's what we've been. This first year has been explosive, but I don't expect that to happen every year. I just put an additional capital to lift up the company to where it should be. It was kind of in starvation mode. And they wanted to be at this size, I feel like.
Yeah. And what's your long-term? So is your long-term plan to run this for the duration of your career? Or are you building it to maybe sell it? Or, you'll just build options for yourself and worry about that in 5 years?
I do have a plan. So everybody I hire for the office, my project manager, a guy used to be an engineer, worked for me years ago. He is a key hire. I want to develop him to be the head of project managers. I have a young man here who does estimating and pre-construction, who I think I could shape to be an operator. and I can, eventually he could be general manager here, and I can look at other acquisitions. So everybody I hire is a potential operator. I have a long Rolodex of engineers that I can contact that would like to make the transition, maybe, and I could forge them into being an operator, much like me. And I would, in maybe in year 2 of this 3-year plan I would go in a different region, maybe North Carolina or Georgia, a very high growth region, and buy probably a larger company, something like maybe 5 to 7 million in revenue, and try to grow that one at the same time as Mac General. So as I grow, all my key hires, I want to shape them into operators. I know where that's part of that Rewild growth plan. It tells me, hey, when you hire someone, and then with my strategy consultant, like you right away, what do you want them to be? What are they now? What do you want them to do? Where do you want them to be? So I'm and my overhead has gone up because I've hired these people earlier than later. And that's okay. I can afford it. I wouldn't want to hire 10 guys all at once and they're all just kicking cans. But if I can hire them a little earlier so they can learn and then plug them into, as the company grows, they grow into the position, that's probably best. But getting the right person in the right spot, right before the right time is very valuable. And so that's what I'm looking at now as I grow.
Well, it seems like you have big aspirations for the company. Like it could be.
Yeah, I like to grow. As like I said, my limiting factors to growth are the working capital that I'm trying to fix. I'll fix in the long term. It will be fixed because I can always just fuel growth with profits from the business. The business gives me about 15% profit a year, so I can use 2/3 or all of it into I pay myself a salary. So for example, this year, I don't think we talked about the number. I'm shooting for 4 million, and it's going to be about 750 SDE. That's the target, give or take a few $1,000, on the revenue, and that's what it's looking like. So my salary and what it's 150K. So the company's going to make 15% on the 4,600K. That's my and I'm going to reinvest most of that, back into working capital. So that's where I can see 7 million growth into 7 million.
So Enrique, let me just stop you there. So just to hear the progress you've made this year, you're run rating $4 million. You think you'll get to 4 million, you think you'll get to $4 million, for the whole year. You'll have 4 million.
Yes. If I don't grow anymore the rest of this year and I keep everything month on month as is, I'll probably do 3.4 million, but I want to do a little more growth. I'm at 19 employees. I'm going to grow to about 23. So for every employee, I'm going to, my run rate increases about 15 to 20 grand a month in revenue. Mm-hmm. So if I grow to 23 by the end of the year, I'll be close to that 4 million.
Mm-hmm. And then 750 of that is profit. Or it's seller discretionary, seller discretionary earnings. So you could pocket that or pocket not all of it and then reinvest, which is what you're going to do. 150 to pay yourself. That's the salary you're paying yourself. 600 right back into the business. Great.
Maybe I'll probably cash out a little bit to transfer the debt. If I get a higher line of credit, I'll probably transfer some debt from my personal balance sheet to the business's balance sheet. Yes. And I will probably take some of that profit and pay down my, securities line of credit, which is a higher rate than the business gets right now. So I probably would pay that off.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Let's turn our attention. By the way, congratulations. I mean, it seems like everything's going. I'm serious. It seems like you're. I don't mean to flatter you, but it seems like you're crushing it, and everything's basically going to plan. Going better than the plan.
I mean, I spent 17 years in a career, and till the day I bought this business, I always, I felt like the Shawshank Redemption when he's crawling through the sewage. And then the day I bought this business and I started running it, it was like when he got that first, the rain on him on the freedom side of the wall.
That taste of freedom.
It felt liberating. It felt very liberating, and I've been enjoying it ever since. Sometimes some of your guests talk about, every day's a knife fight.
Yeah.
I haven't felt that because I have because of the business buyer fit and my advisors. I have, I have my father, Mike, my wife, Lee Mulberry, my consultant, and my brother who listens to me complain. And I feel like it is a knife fight. So there is hurdles and obstacles, but I feel like I walk into that knife fight with a machine gun. So everything solves itself very, very, quite easily. There are problems. Growth has problems.
Well, but also, Enrique, which we've gotten a taste of here now 2 or 3 times from you, is that you are more at home laying down the law in a construction blue collar environment than a lot of people who are coming from W-2 jobs and maybe buying a blue collar business. Right.
But I do have experience in construction management.
Exactly.
And large. Yeah.
Exactly.
So that goes back to my experience. And
exactly.
They obviously placed me in that position years ago because I had the proclivity to be able to handle that.
So you're a natural. It's not even the experience. You were always destined to.
I got to remember to just, turn it off sometimes But I do enjoy the construction. I like construction. I like engineering work, and I like, I pal around with the guys too. I like, sometimes people tell you, you can't be social with people that you lead, and I don't disagree with it, but it's like, I am social with people. I just, but when it's time to do work, it's time to do work.
Before I let you go, a little bit of an education here on, project-based construction businesses, because as we touched on many times in this conversation, I want to have you speak to it directly now. Those businesses are the ones that banks say don't buy, that everyone is scared of, and for good reason. I don't mean to poo-poo everybody's wariness of them, but you are just absolutely thriving in it, and actually think that people should be more open-minded about it. Please give us your pitch on what makes these businesses good. What don't we see?
I mean, when it's very small, the banks shy away from it. When it's a foreman-based business is what I call it. It's 5 to 7 guys. It's owner-centric. You get a job, you do a job, you're doing cash accounting. Those businesses are unbankable, right?
Yeah.
And so when you're that size, and those guys can get up to $1 million or so, but you're still unbankable. You're not going to get in. You don't have the accounting systems in place. You don't have ERP. You're just, everything goes around the owner. When I worked at Whitey's Pool Service, it was owner based, and he made a pretty penny, but it was all around the owner. Nobody knew what was going on but the owner. What Mike used to be, actually, Mike's company in 2009, before the Great Recession, was 26 employees. The recession hit, he went down to 4 employees. Then he grew to 20. Then the pandemic, he went down about 14, and then recently he was down to 10 because guys just left for other jobs. And time catches up to you, and you're not going to grow up to back to 25 people when you're mid 60s. But it shows me this is a resilient company that survived many historical events.
Yeah.
So that was one plus that I saw in the company. It's been around through a few things. The project-based business, when you get to a certain size, when you have professional managers, it's a more stable company. When you have, when you depend on one project, and also the commercial projects, they last from a few months to a couple of years. So you can plan. You can plan. If you have multiple projects, you can fit the manpower around, and you can project a year or 2 out how much manpower you need. I can project out my growth. And to me, a service-based business with a good backlog has 4 weeks, 6 weeks. Like, I don't know how I probably wouldn't be able to go to bed at night too often if I dropped me below 3 weeks, but you always have to, you have a certain gross margin that's limited, and then you have to have a big sales funnel, and you're paying for leads to keep getting all this residential work and whatever service businesses do. I don't have that issue. I pre-qualify, and the larger I get, the more I pre-qualify for larger jobs that the smaller guys can't get.
Yeah.
I am not competing with Chuck and the truck. And I'm not changing old ladies' fans in their basements. I do switchgear replacements. I design, build, service upgrades, heavy electrical work that uses and then me being an engineer and hiring my project manager as an engineer, I have a very good value proposition where I'm giving you better quality work at the same price as other electrical contractors. But back to the project-based business. If you have multiple projects, you fit the manpower. It's called it's operations management. You're just like a call center, where if you have one person answering the phones, the phone calls could go from 1 minute to 10 hours because all you have is one person. The more people you have, the more likely your average call time hits a certain number, and you can plan around that.
Yeah.
When you have multiple projects at the same time of differing sizes and different schedules, you can plan around that. You can fit your manpower, your crews in between these jobs as the projects progress in phases and level of construction, and then the length of the jobs, and then I can bid on jobs that aren't happening for another year. That's my backlog. I can, and I plan, hey, in February and March of next year, I got to do the switchgear replacement. I'm going to need 8 guys. As I fill that up, I can plan ahead very far in advance once I start building that backlog in a project-based business. Also, the bigger I get, the margins get bigger. If you look at the largest 50 companies in construction that are all they're all $1 billion plus companies. I mean, I can't name any service-based businesses that can grow to that size. Mm-hmm. I think Neighborly is one of them, but yeah. So the project, at the single level, at the foreman-based level, it's very risky. But when you get to a certain size, you just continue. You have your my company set up with, I've got the estimate is my sales funnel, right? I got Mike and one other guy estimating all day and sending estimates out at my bid funnel. And around every 17 bids, I win a job and I plan it out. I'm more operations and project management. I also have a dedicated project manager that handles all the project, and we have an admin that helps them. I have my foreman. I have 5 foremen out there in multiple projects. Right now I have 5 active projects where guys are in construction. And they delegate the work from the plants to the laborers to do the day-to-day activities. And I do, with my dad who's accounting, we do the billing and we do the business, right? I got guys that do the work. I got guys that get the work, and I do the business.
Let me follow up a few things there, Enrique. So this point that you have about project-based businesses where you have multiple projects going on at any given time over the next 6 and 24 months, all these work streams, and you can kind of fit them together like a jigsaw puzzle. Mm-hmm. So that in fact, your resource allocation, your people allocation is kind of evenly spread out nicely. And so too, maybe more importantly, your revenue. So you've taken what we think of as very lumpy revenue and you've smoothed it out.
Just like the call center, if you have enough projects, it can smooth itself out. Mm-hmm. Will you do more work on one and the other? The schedules are flexible. They're not that constrained usually, so you can smooth it out when you have several projects. Mm-hmm. And then you get more profit because, for example, Mike had a utilization rate for his guys of 50 to 60%. That means his guys were not busy 40 to 50% of the time, and he was looking for them to work. My guys right now, I got 14 guys in the field full time, and they're at 110%. Mm-hmm. They're on overtime. I have everybody at 110% utilization rate. That 10% tells me I need to hire another guy because I'm paying overtime out there. But
Enrique, I would imagine it all sounds good in theory. No, I mean, you know this.
It's not theory anymore.
Well, yeah, exactly. I don't mean to sound skeptical, but it does. It sounds good in theory. But then, like when I hear you talk about, what did you say, the switch repair or whatever that you have next year. All these and construction is also notoriously not on schedule. So all this stuff when you're scheduling something for 9 months from now is bound to change, right? So
it could change,
and so you just juggle it. I mean, the answer is you just adapt.
Then you go get another more jobs. If it changes, it shouldn't change last minute. There are delays sometimes, not so much at the subcontractor level unless you create it. So a bad subcontractor will cause delays. I try not to be that subcontractor. This year has been a hectic year, because of lots of outside forces, and so I've had materials issues, and I asked Mike if this was normal. We've won 5 jobs that have been canceled. And usually like municipal and county funded jobs, that doesn't happen because the funding happens years in advance. But due to irregularities, there's been a lot of canceled projects. So I'm like, oh, okay, I've had this $500,000 in the pipeline for the summer. Disappeared a week before it starts, which is very unlikely. That's a hurdle. Yeah. And we get around it. It means my backlog went from a year, that if I had a 9 months to a year, went down to 5 to 6 months right now. That's a hurdle I'm dealing with right now. I had a project get canceled. But I got another one in the books that if I get, I'm going to be pretty happy. That was another thing I was telling you. If I don't know how you celebrate in the service-based business, but when we get a huge project, $2-3 million project, we go and get beers immediately and celebrate. The service-based business, they're not gonna. Well, I just plunged my 1,000th toilet. Let's go get beers. It doesn't sound right. It's not. Yeah, there are. I wouldn't call it a cyclicality because it's the commercial work is cyclical, sort of. Not like residential multifamily that's tied to mortgage rates and stuff. But when you do municipal work, like the wastewater or you're working in schools, the budgets are planned out so far in advance. Like it's very rare. That's why it's very rare that this happened this year. Lots of canceled jobs. It's not.
And I assume being in the DC area, not far from me, this is all Doge related.
Yeah, there was definitely a federal job that we won that was put on back burner. There was a elementary school renovation in Frederick, Maryland that got canceled the week before we're about to start. Now it's very rare. I got another job in Leesburg that got rebid, so it gets backtracked. It's always, it could just be a misalignment of the stars, have nothing to do with, outside forces, but, it's irregular that have several of those projects that you win get canceled. But, we go, you move on and you just keep bidding. That's why I got my sales funnel always bidding. Yeah. And I don't worry about that. And you have your 3 key structures and they're all working in sync. You can react to issues much quicker. Everybody knows their function. I got the sales always be estimating, people doing the work and managing the work. And then I'll take care of managing the business.
Say again about the fact that the bigger you get, the bigger the margins are. Is that because there's less competition for bigger jobs, and so you can command bigger margins? Because that's counterintuitive. Usually, the bigger the company, margins compress as you get bigger. Is generally what you see.
The work is larger. It's more complicated. More complicated work gets a higher margin.
Right, but they're also dangling a $10 million job, and so they can push you down on price because it's such a big piece of work. You'd be willing to come down on your own bid.
For example, I can't compete on it. I can't be at a $10 million job. So there's a moat. If you're a certain size, if you don't have the manpower, for example, I have a buddy in the data center industry, and he told me, hey, I got this job. It's replacing a bunch of ATS switches, that transfer between generator and line voltage and utility voltage. It's something small, maintenance, basically a maintenance job. If you can do it, it's yours. But the data center construction is very smart, and they know how many guys you need when you need them. They would buy the equipment, but they're like, oh, you'll need 26 guys working from 9 p.m. to 9 a.m. for 6 weeks. I don't have 26 guys. I can't take that job. I'm limited at my size, and there's not many. There's a gap in the middle market for construction for electrical contractors. So there's very large ones, and there's a lot around my size, so a little bigger, but there's not much. There's less competition. So for
certain size jobs, you actually have pricing power, which is not something we associate with construction.
There's a lot of pricing power the larger you are, because less companies can do that size job. You need hundreds of people. You need a full staff of engineers to work through the details. You need a handful of project managers. You need such a large workforce to do a large project like a data center. People can't, very few competitors.
Yeah. What is bonding and how does it work? Just briefly.
So bonding is basically insurance that the job will be completed. So when you're the GC or a sub, the owner will ask. Usually it's the law for any publicly funded work that you are bonded for payment and performance. It means you will pay everybody and you will perform the work. And if you don't, the bonding company will find another contractor to finish your work. And that's basically, it's not just insurance, like here's money, the job didn't get built. That it's the bonding company will find another contractor, pay them what they want to complete the job. And obviously afterwards, the bonding company will take the non-performing contractors, assets in court. But if it ever happens.
You have to pay a bonding company to
yeah, you pay like 2% of the project fee in bonding. That's like the going rate. Depending if it's more risk, it could be higher. If you're well established, it's probably lower towards your 1.5%, 1%. My rate is 2%. I have a couple of jobs that are public jobs that I had to get a bond, and so the
bonding company they're not an insurance company, but it's similar in that they're pooling risk, so that 90% or 98% of their jobs it's all fine, but then for that 2% they have to foot the bill, find the new contractor, and then they chase you down to get reimbursed.
Yep. Okay. That's what the bond says. It will get done, and the bonding company's guaranteeing it.
Yeah. Okay. All right, Enrique, did I miss anything? This has been great.
I always wish all the searchers best of luck. I joined Justin Willis joined the Nova created the Nova ETA group.
Yes,
to
sir.
help searchers, buying businesses and I wish that I had that when I was searching. I would say don't look past project-based businesses, but definitely have a plan. And maybe even get a job as a project manager, and you'll understand projects and how they work. Key hires are very important. I learned that through my consultant, Lee, and business buyer fit. I can't stand when people say I'm agnostic to what I'm going to buy. It doesn't make sense to me. If you're a professional and you have value in a certain industry, exploit that value. Why wouldn't you do that?
I hear you, Enrique. On the other hand, what if you want to get out of your industry? What if your industry is not a good place to buy a business? So certainly there's logic to it if you can make it happen. But
you should probably experiment with a job in a different industry before you dive in and buy a business and get indebted millions of dollars.
Yeah. Well,
definitely have a plan before day one. I would always recommend that. And sometimes the business will tell you what it needs, what it wants, what it needs to grow and to prosper. It
whispers in your ear.
It whispers. It actually slaps you upside the head. Yeah. You'll
and
see
also
it in
have a partner. Yeah. It sounds like your wife is good. She presses you when needed, but she also encourages you. So it's not, she's not just, so she said, go get an MBA. Why do you feel you're qualified to run a business? But then when you started getting cold feet, she said, no, I believe in you. Go do it.
Yeah.
Right?
Now, I mean, she's once in a while, she's like, hey, what happened at work this week? And I was like, it's all good. A couple of problems. She's like, okay, baby needs a diaper change. Sounds good. She's not worried about it. Everything's going good. But yeah, I appreciate her, every day. And
let's not forget that 750,000 too.
Yeah. That's being she's basically my independent sponsor. So, I appreciate that too. Thank my dad for all the free labor, cause he does most of the accounting until I'm actually looking for like a remote accountant now. That's going to be one of in my management team. I'm trying to grow. And
System 6, plug for one of my sponsors in the searcher community. Great guys, yeah. Chris Williams. Yep.
I'm actually looking at somewhere.com. I think what's this guy's name?
Nick Huber.
Somewhere. Yeah. I look because you can hire your own. You're not doing fractional or anything. You can have your own person.
Right. Offshore.
I like that.
Of course. That's their whole thing. Yeah. All right, Enrique. Well, cool. If to put your LinkedIn in the show notes, if people want to reach out.
Yes, it's Enrique Rodriguez, Mag General Power Solutions. Reach me out by LinkedIn. I look at it, daily. And if you have any questions on projects, I'm happy to answer.
Great.
Or construction or managing people. I don't know.
Well, thanks for coming on, Enrique. Thanks for all the transparency down to the numbers, down to where you got your 750. We really appreciate it, and congratulations on this plan going so well. It really seems to be.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate your show. It's I've listened to every podcast, and it inspires me. It teaches me lessons, and I listen to every single one.
Oh, that's beautiful to hear. Thank you,
and
sir.
I listen to the Minds Capital. Maybe in a year or two, I'll probably graduate to the Minds Capital podcast.
You're on your way. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Thanks, Enrique.
Thank you.
Hope you enjoyed that interview. Don't forget to subscribe to the Acquiring Minds newsletter. We send an email for every episode with an introduction to the interview, a link to the video version on YouTube, and soon, key takeaways, numbers, and more essentials from the interview for those of you who don't have time to listen or watch it. Subscribe at acquiringminds.co. You'll also find all our webinars there on the website, both those we have coming up and recordings of past webinars. At this point, there are over 30 webinar recordings, a wealth of information on all the technical nitty-gritty of buying a business. acquiringminds.co.